Life is all about connecting the dots. And today I have with me Amy Stoehr. Amy is going to talk to us about when she looks back at her life, how everything was just meant to be and it got her where she wanted to go. Amy, welcome to Soul Talks with Alka.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, this is a long time coming, but thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming. So Amy, talk to us about how your journey began, and we'll get to where it actually landed you and why you're here. But talk to us about how the dot started.
Well, it's interesting when I look back, Alka, on every big and small thing that's happened in my life, how God had a plan for me that whole time. And I think all the way back to when I first got into the real estate industry, and I'd been working for a top producing agent for 3 years. And I found myself in the hospital in the NICU because my son came 6 weeks early.
Oh boy.
And they kept bumping me, downgrading my room because they needed the rooms for the other people that were coming in and giving birth. I ended up in the basement of the hospital in a tiny room, the width of a twin bed and a metal locker. And I was proofing a Homes and Lifestyle ad and waiting for the phone to ring to say, come back up to the NICU. It's time to feed the baby. And I thought, what in the heck am I doing? So what I decided to do was reach out to my mentor, Howard Brinton, because the person I was working with, I'd reached a plateau, and there was another agent who was trying to recruit me to come work with him. And it felt like a lateral move, and I just really wasn't sure. And I had met Howard, and I actually taught at a couple of his events. And so I called him just for some fatherly advice. And at the end of a 20-minute call, he said, hey, you're a bright kid. You'll do fine no matter where you land. And by the way, we're going through staffing changes ourselves right now. I don't suppose you want to add like 1,200 miles to your commute. And he laughed. And I thought he was joking. So I said, shoot me an offer, Howard. And I laughed, and we hung up the phone. 4 hours later, his wife, Babs, calls me. And she says, I was just talking to Howard, and we're not even sure what we'd have you do, but why don't you spend the weekend putting a proposal together?
Wow.
And I hung up from that call, and I remember so distinctly, I was sitting in the nursery, and I called out to my husband, and I said, we lived in Indiana at the time, do you want to move to Colorado? And he goes, heck yeah. I said, no, I'm not kidding. I'm actually being serious. That was Barbara Brinton on the phone. And they want me to put a proposal together. And he's like, why not? Why not? Let's be the adventurous spirits. And you have to understand, both of our families are very much, everybody's in the Midwest. In fact, almost all of them are in Indiana. And so here we are with a newborn baby, considering moving halfway across the country where we know nobody, and starting fresh. And so to me, when we talk about the ... moments, there are these moments, whether it's a small or a big decision, where if we can get quiet long enough to listen to what God's trying to tell us, there are amazing, brilliant opportunities that are waiting for us.
Absolutely.
And so that was like the big number one of them all. So we moved out to Colorado, and I started out as a personal assistant to Howard Brinton. And by the time I reached my tenure there, I was pretty much running the company.
Wow, I remember that.
Executive VP. And as you'll recall, end of 2007, beginning of 2008, we were in a really awful real estate market, and things were starting to not be awesome in the training industry either. And to make a long story short, on January 4th, I was let go from the company, which was followed by a whole bunch of other people getting let go in the coming weeks. At the time, I didn't know that was about to happen. And I found myself as the primary breadwinner in my household, suddenly completely out of work, feeling over-specialized and unmarketable. And it was another ... moment. What am I going to do?
And how are you feeling at this point? right?
Oh,
Because you're
Alka.
at a high and then all of a sudden you're let go.
Yeah. So I think that comes a lot with the ... moments.
Yeah.
This juxtaposition of feeling hopeless and desperate and not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
And then as you start to process, at least for me, when I started to process the opportunity and the breakthrough and the possibilities that can open up. And so I'd been coaching at that point for pretty close to 7 years, in addition to all the other things I was doing, product development and whatnot. And I thought, you know what? It's time to follow my passion. And so I launched my own coaching and consulting business. I know. And then as I started to get the word out that I was going to do my own thing, the people who mattered, and this is a very important thing for your listeners to hear, the people who matter show up if you will simply get clear, get focused, and get quiet. The things
That
you need
is
to show
such
up.
a pearl in Howard's words. That those
Thank
who
you.
matter will always show up.
Yes. It was amazing to watch the people step up and say, I believe in you. I'm going to invest in you because I know it's an investment in myself too. And things took off. And I can't stress enough how important it is to trust your instinct. We all hear those little voices in our head and we tend to dismiss them. And I started honoring them. And that clarity set me on a path to just a lot of other amazing things happening. Now, that didn't occur without some real pain also.
What was
And
the
I
lowest
think,
point in this journey? Because obviously you're a single breadwinner. This transition is not so easy, right? Everybody who gets laid off from a job, everybody who has that goes through this pain. How did you get yourself out of that lowest point?
first of all, I completely trusted a very small circle of friends.
Mm-hmm.
I reached out to people I knew I could count on to be there for me no matter what. The second was my increasing faith. I'd been on a path already, and it was a real test in that moment because losing, and I'll say it like I grieved the loss, the death of a loved one, losing star power, I thought it was my whole life. Yeah. And I discovered that wasn't a true statement. It was a lie I'd been telling myself. And so I started asking God for more clarity. And I trusted my small circle to rally around me and give me thoughtful advice to get going. And then I just had to get to work. Yeah. And I think that's where most people, they either get frozen at the thought of the what ifs. We all do this, right? Well, what if this happens? Well, what if that happens? Well, what if it does? Yeah. I tell coaching clients this all the time now. I'm like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Let's play it out. Absolute worst thing that could possibly happen if you do X. Yeah. And we walk it all the way to the end. Yeah. And then we reel it back to reality.
Yeah. A lot of times it's the paralysis of analysis, right? Yes. They analyze things to death.
And if you don't examine the probability of those fears, which in my experience, Alka, is almost consistently less than 5%.
Yes.
Now, if you have a 95 or better % chance of something succeeding and a 5% or less chance of it not, what are you waiting for? Yeah. When you reach a point of darkness like that and you allow people in, you allow spirit in, you allow your circle in, you allow the energy of the universe in, then things start to happen and you have to move. Yeah. You have to get going.
But my question, there's a lot of people who curl up, right? Who don't reach out. And I think it's when you don't reach out and you suffer alone, that's the hardest part. Like, what made you say, you know what, I'm going to get help. I'm going to talk to my friends, because that's so important to get a circle of influence that can help you.
Part of it is just deciding that it's okay to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And in 2002, I actually had, we don't call it a nervous breakdown anymore. I was labeled with panic disorder, and nobody knew what was happening except for, Howard himself, obviously my husband, and just a few of my very closest friends. And it was at that time, I had to get vulnerable fast.
Wow.
And so sharing what was going on inside of me, I started noticing how many Me Too's were showing up. If you'll forgive the expression,
Yeah.
people don't talk about
People don't.
ailments that exist
Yeah.
inside the mind. They only talk about the ones for the body.
Yes.
And
only what you can see.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that, I think, gave me the lesson that I carried forward. So yes, I was devastated when I wasn't with Star Power anymore. And I knew, I had a knowing that being vulnerable is a good thing.
Yes.
I remember even telling Howard in his office the day that this all happened. I've never said this publicly before. I can't believe I'm telling you. I said, I would really love nothing more than to be able to be myself right now and be authentic. I know I'm about to start crying. And I hate that that's about to happen, because there are 3 men in this room with me, and you will perceive it as a sign of weakness. And that's what it is at all. This is how my body expresses anger and disagreement. And I'm still powerful. And owning myself in that moment was pivotal to me recovering. Now, I spent about 2 weeks of just blubbering, talking to somebody, getting advice, blubbering.
Of course.
And
of course.
I came out. I said, okay, enough of that. It served me for the period of time I did it, and now it's time to get going.
Nice.
And so that's kind of a ribbon that shows up going forward. I wasn't taking care of myself physically in these first few years after Star Power, because I was so focused on getting the business going. And God bless a friend of mine at the time introducing me to the owner of a local gym. That has turned out to be an amazing community. It's all women. It's called Fit Chick Express. They do live stream classes, so you should check them out at fitchickexpress.com. They don't even know I'm giving them a commercial. What that then gave me was a confidence in my physicality, because I had the mental confidence. I started taking better care of myself. I started eating right. I dropped some weight. And most importantly, I met a couple of people at the gym that have become 2 of my very best friends. One of which, whose name you'll hear 100,000 times, Donna. Everyone needs a Donna in their life, okay? She is a spitfire. She's full of energy. She's been through her own weight loss journey. If you met her, you would never believe that she has shredded 80 pounds.
Wow.
You would just think she's been this bubbly fitness instructor her whole life. And she was teaching Zumba at the time. And I decided to give it a go because I like to dance. And she just came in one day and she said, "Who wants to do the devil dash with me?" I didn't even know what it was, but you know what? When you get an instinct that you should spend more time with someone, go with it. Don't question it. When you reach out to me for this show, I was like, are you kidding me? More time with Alka? Yes, please. And so after I said yes, then I started asking questions about what I got myself into. Some of the people watching may know that the Devil Dash is a mud run, 5K, 21 obstacles, stuff I'd never done in my lifetime. Wow. I'm the girl that flunked gymnastics in high school gym. So this was huge for me. And she's just become the person that puts things in front of me that the old version of me would say no to, and the version of me that I am evolving into just says yes, and then figures it out.
Wow, we all need a Donna in our
Yeah,
lives.
we sure do. You can't
That's
have mine though.
awesome.
She's mine.
I didn't say we need your Donna. I said we need a Donna. You can have your Donna. We just need
fair
a
enough.
Donna.
Fair enough. I'll share her with the world. She's amazing.
That's awesome. It's good to have someone like that. Someone who takes you out of your element, so to speak.
And I'd be remiss if I don't mention something. A lot of times we're looking for someone in our existing circle to be somebody they're not.
Mm.
And I will give Barbara Brinton credit for saying to me, we were teaching Team Training University, and I always did the session on personality types, the DISC.
Mm-hmm.
My husband was also working for Star Power at the time, and he was in the audience. And he's an amazing guy. You just love him. I kept looking at him during my presentation, hoping that I would get the visual confirmation that I was doing a good job. And he was just deadpan, poker face the whole time. It was so frustrating. And I remember afterwards saying to Babs, I just kept looking at him and I wasn't getting any sort of a response. And she goes, Amy, you know his personality type. Quit looking to people to be something that they're not wired to be.
Yeah.
You need a cheerleader. You've got all these other people in the room you know are that personality type. Look at them.
That's
Quit
awesome.
putting so much pressure on him to be somebody he's not.
And you know, that is, again, like such a pearl, right? A lot of times we depend on the people who are in our lives to give us what we think they should give us, because that's what we expect from them. And then when they don't, we get disappointed. And then we say, but why? I gave them so much. Why aren't they giving it to me?
Yes.
But it's not them. They can't do it. We got to look to somebody else who can.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way.
Yeah.
Find your people who fill the holes you have in your soul.
Yes.
Whatever the holes are. And it doesn't have to all be filled by one person.
That's right. Absolutely. So going back to Donna.
Yes. Okay. So fast forward, that was in 2012 when she did that to me. And we ended up running a bunch of mud runs together, which is so fun. Not doing any of that type of stuff right now. Thank you, COVID. I have been dreaming about Africa since I was a little girl. My grandparents lived near St. Louis, and every time we went to visit, they would take us to the zoo. And for some reason, I am captivated by lions, like no other animal. I love animals, period, but lions. And so a friend of mine, her aunt, Safari K, owns a company called Destined to Travel.
Nice.
And they do something called a Make a Difference Safari. And so my friend had told me about it, and I was really excited at the notion of it, but I couldn't justify for myself that that was something I should do in my life just then. And so I go to the gym. Donna comes in one day, walks up to me and says, I've decided I want to summit Mount Kilimanjaro before I turn 55. Will you go with me? Now, anyone who knows me for any length of time, up until 5 years ago, would say, Amy would never do that. But Donna was also the one who came into the gym one day and said, who wants to climb a 14er? And for those of you who don't know what that is, that's a mountain that's over 14,000 feet tall. So my husband used to climb 14ers all the time. And I thought he was crazy. And now here I am, fast forward 10 years later, and I'm the one going out. And I'm sure he thinks I'm crazy. So we did that a few times. So then she comes in and she says she wants to climb Kilimanjaro before she turns 55. And like I always do with Donna, I said yes without knowing what I was committing to. And then I started backpedaling. Wait a minute, that's in Africa, right? Wait a minute. How tall is that mountain? Oh, 19,341.
And how much do you have to train?
That's like way taller than what we've climbed. And how much time do I have before you turn 55? Because I'm going to have to train for this. So then I got the light bulb moment. And this is another one of those ... dots where if you be still and be quiet and listen, things will start coming together.
Yes.
The energy of the universe pulls it together. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to travel halfway around the world and be in Africa, and the Safari K does the bulk of her trips to Tanzania.
Right. Exactly. Just makes common sense.
Why not? Let's just mash it all up and make this grand adventure of a lifetime. And so then we started asking other people if they wanted to get involved. And long story short, there were 6 of us that went in and to do Kilimanjaro. 5 of us made it.
And you guys summited. 5 of you summited?
5 of us summited.
Nice.
1 had to go back down. And then 2 of those gals had to leave and go back after the climb. And then 8 other people flew in just to do the Make a Difference safari.
Oh,
so
nice.
We spent time at a children's home and then went on safari.
Nice.
And then the next ... happened.
Of course. But isn't life full of ... dots when you start on one thing? You just look back and say,
yes,
I can't believe all of this connected. It's all like sliding doors, right? If you didn't do one thing, your whole life could have changed its own path. It's just how you trust the process.
And it's amazing to think, if I had not said yes to the first mud run, would I have summited Mount Kilimanjaro?
Yes, exactly. You don't know. Who knows?
Crazy.
You probably wouldn't have, but you don't know.
Right. You just don't know.
Yeah.
I've gone that circle with so many things in my life. If I hadn't said yes to this, or if I hadn't done that, would I be where I am today? Absolutely. It could be a totally different life, and it could be a magnificent life, but it wouldn't be the one I'm leading right now.
Absolutely.
So when someone asks you, has anyone ever asked you, do you have any regrets? No.
Yeah, I always say I don't either. I don't
everything that's happened to us, Alka, has led us to be where we are exactly in this moment right now.
Absolutely.
And if we changed any bit of that, any of the suffering, any of the sad moments, we could radically alter the rest of our life. Absolutely. And I wouldn't give up anything with where I am today.
Yeah, I think everything that happens is a lesson that is going to lead you somewhere. Yeah. As long as you trust the process.
Indeed. Indeed.
Yeah.
Truer words were never spoken.
And you have faith. I think the fact that you have faith and I have faith is huge, right? Because we believe in a higher power. We believe in someone else holding the reins to our lives, supposedly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So next ... Yes. So while I was on the mountain, there were, of course, it was a difficult, physically difficult. More so than that, it was mentally challenging.
Understatement.
Well, yeah. You know what? When you're on the other side of it, it doesn't seem as monumental, you know? It's like having children and you go through a difficult childbirth, and in the moment you're like, I'll never have another child again for the rest of my life. And then number 2, you know? So I found myself very challenged a couple of times on the mountain. And I was so blessed to be with a group of women, and none of us knew this about each other, that we were all very strong in our faith. And so I started reaching out to God when I was on the mountain. I remember very specifically, there was one time, you get in this condition when you're up at higher elevations where it's literally cold out, but the exertion of what you're doing is making you warm. And so the inclination is to want to take your layers off. But if you do, it's cold enough that that's a really bad idea. Yeah. And so I specifically asked God, I said, if you could just send me a gentle breeze right now, I think I'll be fine. I think I'll keep my coat on. I think I'll be okay. And literally, Alka, I kid you not, within seconds, this gentle breeze just showed up from out of nowhere. There wasn't a cloud in the sky, and it hung with me for about 10 minutes. And it was just the most lovely gift. And I knew that came immediately because it was a specific request to the higher power that could give me what I needed.
Absolutely. I think hiking is such a spiritual experience because
I
you're
agree.
alone at that time, even though you're a group, you're alone with nature and you're
Mhm.
just with the higher power. I think it's so spiritual. We went to Machu Picchu and I get so many things happened that were like that.
Oh, yeah.
I would say, God, please do this. I can't. And all of a sudden, from someplace, you'll get this energy. And
It's
you're like, oh my,
amazing, isn't
it's
it?
amazing. It's like really, the higher power really takes you through it at that time.
So that happened a few times. I made specific requests for different things, and I was just awestruck and so grateful each time I was answered. What I prayed for, it was answered. So the next ... then, after all these wonderful interactions with God, was I got to talking to the fellows who were with us on the mountain, who are just the most selfless, kind, servant-hearted, joyful people I have ever met in my entire life. I just fell in love with all of them. And I was talking to a couple of them and discovering what mattered to them, because I just kept thinking there's got to be more we can do for them. They have
Yep.
so little and yet they're so happy.
Yeah.
And I found out that the big thing for them is they dream about getting their kids to private school where they can learn English.
Mm,
Because if they learn English, then the possibilities for what they can do in life blow wide open.
right.
There are only two countries in the world that speak Swahili, Tanzania and Kenya,
Yeah.
either side of Mount Kilimanjaro. And so if all they ever know is Swahili, they're ill-equipped to
Yeah.
do anything outside of what's in their immediate reality. And so I got to asking questions, and it turns out for what we consider in the US a very small amount of money, you could get a child in school for a year. And so I talked to my husband about it when he showed up, because he came for the second half of the trip, and we were in agreement we would help one child.
Oh, nice.
And then God said, oh no.
I have bigger plans for you.
What? One child? Yes. My favorite Bible verse, Jeremiah 29:11. Great plans indeed. So without laboring the details, I launched a foundation last year. We got 501c3 status in less than 60 days.
Nice.
Last year, we sponsored 18 children
Oh,
to
wow.
go to school. And that sponsoring means somebody's sticking with them the whole time they're in school, not I'll do it this year. We had additional people who just stepped up and did donations.
And how much is it per year for a child?
$600.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing.
Amazing.
Absolutely amazing.
And so people commit for $600 a year for how many years? 10 years?
Depends on the child.
Okay.
So right now we are focusing on the fellows who were in our crew on the mountain, just taking care of their kiddos. And then once we expand outside that circle, we're going to have to get a lot more meticulous about a whole lot of things. But right
look
now,
at their dots. They never thought that they were going to help someone who was going to help their kids go to school.
Dot became a drop, which created a ripple effect.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Crazy. It's crazy when you think of this stuff.
Incredible. It's
yes.
incredible.
And all because someone said to you, or not someone, your Donna, and that it's going to be anybody's Donna,
yes.
says to you, do you want to try this?
Yes.
Let's do this. It's crazy.
Yeah. You could go all the way back to the decision to go be with Howard and Star Power.
Yes.
The gal I was working with at the time, amazing, amazing lady, Kathy Russell in West Lafayette, Indiana. Go Purdue. I told her I was conflicted about what to do, because here's Howard making me an offer and I was just calling for advice. And she said, Amy, God doesn't make these opportunities every day. You need to listen.
Nice.
And you need to act. And
That's
because of that encouragement from her, I took a huge leap.
Absolutely. So for people who are in middle of something, thinking or on the fence, right? They're on the fence. They're saying, should I, shouldn't I? I'm at a lowest point in my life, whether it is in a job change, a bad relationship, a sickness, an illness. What would your advice be to them to say, how do you make decisions to connect your dots?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'd love to coach every single person who's in that position. And I would start with, what fills you with joy?
Mm.
When are you the happiest? What are you doing? And then how might that fold into either a vocation or an avocation? I find that people who are absent a why are ultimately unfulfilled, no matter how much money they're making. And so if you have the opportunity to examine where you're at in life and what you're doing, whether you're completely down on your luck or you've had a successful career and don't know what your next is, start thinking about it in terms of what you have to offer the world, what brings you joy, because they're not always the same thing.
Absolutely.
You can be really good at something and really hate doing it.
Yep, absolutely.
So when you can find the magic place where those two things marry, great. And sometimes you just need to leverage what you know you can do really well and offer the world to build the resources to fulfill the purpose.
Absolutely. Amazing advice needs a lot of thought, though, right? Because those
Yes.
answers are not easy.
Mm-mm.
Those answers are what you said. You need to sit with yourself.
Mm.
You need to sit alone with yourself, because a lot of times we're just running, and we don't want to answer those questions because they take so much thought.
There is a magic formula that Howard and I got a clear articulation of when we were in coach training. And most people run it backwards. They focus on getting, it's have, do, be is the backwards version. And they focus on, if I have this, then I'll be able to do this. And once I do that, then I will be able to be this. And if you take nothing else out of this time today, then to flip the narrative on that and say, this is who I choose to be. And because I choose to be that person, I am able to do this. And because I am able to do this, I'll be able to have this.
Wow.
If you can flip that narrative in your life, everything's going to change.
That's awesome. Change have, do, be, to be, do, have.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Amy. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for sharing your secrets. We appreciate it.
From my heart, thank you for having me, Alka.
Absolutely. All right, take it easy. Bye. Say hello to your Donna for me.
I will. Love you, girl.
Take care.